What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. So over the next couple of weeks, we're gonna have some big games coming out from Sony, Nintendo, and then Capcom following up next week with Resident Evil Village. Well, it looks like one of those games has already broken street date, leaking out early, and I think another game is gonna follow suit, and we're gonna talk about that one here today. Also, we are going to be talking about the Nintendo Switch, as it has been a sales beast across the world, but especially in Japan, where it's crossed yet another milestone for Nintendo. And we're also going to take another look at Marvel's Avengers game, because the situation around that keeps getting worse. Guys, if you enjoy these videos, make sure that like button helps out a ton. And if you're new here to the Spawn Wave channel, make sure you subscribe down below. And we're going to start today with Respawn. It's probably one of the best acquisitions that EA's made in a long time, because they keep putting out good game after good game after good game. And after what they did with the Star Wars franchise with Jedi Fallen Order, I'm just convinced they can do anything at this point. But it looks like EA is going to be giving them some freedom here to create their own new IP. And we can see this over on Twitter from Jason, who's a design director at Respawn, saying, "Come work on a brand new IP." This was quote tweeting Steven, who said, "Want to get in early and help build a new IP from scratch? We're a team of 5 right now, looking for our 6th, who would be a coder." All of this pointing back to a job listing on Respawn's website talking about creating a new IP from scratch. And it's pretty cool to see that from Respawn, because like I said, they've been a lot of their releases have just been very, very good. And even when they went to EA, they said, "Hey, we're making Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, and there's not gonna be any loot boxes or microtransactions." People didn't believe them. Like they released the game and people still didn't believe it. And then they came back and they did a free update with new content put into the game, and people still didn't believe it. So, hey, at this point, let Respawn do their thing. And yes, that also means we need Titanfall 3. Like, Titanfall 2 still blows people away. Sean tried it for the first time, RGT, last week, came on the podcast, says it's one of the best shooters he's ever played. It came out, unfortunately, between Battlefield and Call of Duty. It was better than both of those games, but sold significantly less. And then, oh, when you know it, EA bought Respawn. So, funny how that works. But at this point, EA, I think it's time. Let's start hearing about a sequel to Titanfall 2, and let's get Titanfall 3 out there. Oh, and we, of course, talked last week about Sony reversing their decision to shut down the PlayStation 3, the Vita, and the PSP store on those consoles. And it looks like people were starting to browse around on the Webstore that Sony revamped last year as they were building up to the PlayStation 5, and noticed that you could still technically buy a lot of the games that Sony had removed from the website, that being the PS3, the Vita, and the PSP. We can see this tweet here. This one is from Chris, who says, "This makes sense. The old PlayStation web store wasn't taken down as much as they just got rid of a few HTML files to prevent you from accessing the API. So someone made a Firefox plugin to restore it, and it works, allowing you to go through and buy the different games, or even just set them up queue to download." There's also a video online that shows you how to do it manually without the plugin, where you are copying and pasting different URLs into archive.org, or you can use a Firefox plugin, Valkyrie PS Store. So this is good to know. I don't know how long, say, Sony's going to keep the PSP, the PS3, or the Vita stores open. Could be another year, could be 2 years, but yes, we will get to the point where those shut down. So if Sony forgets to go back and like fix these different pages or cut it off completely, this could at least be something that could be used farther into the future, but we'll see how long this one holds up. Otherwise, though, go check out the plugin and see how it works. Oh, and do you remember PlayStation Home? I remember loading this up back on on my PS3 back in the day, and it was such an interesting experience. It's like Second Life on your PlayStation 3, where you'd go in and you'd be able to talk with other people and kind of walk around, and you'd be able to design your own like apartment and just kind of hang out with people virtually. It was strange back then, and I guess people now have adapted to things like VR chat, so using a VR headset. But it looks like Sony has actually re-upped the trademark through 2028 for PlayStation Home, and naturally that's getting people to speculate, do they have plans for PlayStation Home on the PS5? And you know what would be a cool idea is if they took the PlayStation VR 2 and had PlayStation Home come back for that, much like we have VR chat. Because I remember at one point, I'm trying to remember which year it was for E3. Maybe because someone can remind me in the comments down below. But they set up E3 basically in Home, and you'd go through and you'd look at like different theaters and presentations and trailers, and it was a cool idea. You kind of put that with VR, especially if the PlayStation VR 2 is more advanced, and you could have an interesting experience without having to then go to E3. Either way though, PlayStation Home in like say 2022 or something, I wouldn't mind seeing that, just see how crazy it'd be online. And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start right away with Resident Evil Village, because it has leaked out early. And the interesting thing about this is it technically leaked a long time ago with those different files from Capcom during that entire thing where they were being held at ransom for a bunch of files from their servers that did include quite a bit of info around Resident Evil Village. But at times you would see it and it was kind of broken up. It looked like it was like developer files and scenes that were obviously not how you would see it. You'd see the boss from like far away and in a weird spot. This appears that the game itself has actually broken street date from a retailer or from a warehouse somewhere. You can see this tweet here. This is from Kaiser499 saying, "Beware of Resident Evil Village spoilers, the game has now leaked. It appears that the install size for it is just over 27 gigabytes with no day one patch available yet. Obviously, it's not out until the 7th. And they also posted an image of the backing after people were kind of asking, wait, this looks like maybe one that you printed up. At least from here, it doesn't look to be the case. They have images up online of both the front and the back of the box. And like I said, the one thing here is there's been a lot of leaks around Resident Evil Village, but if you were someone who was able to avoid that, and it actually wasn't too hard to do because technically the files that were being shared around were just illegal to share, really. I mean, they were internal files that was illegally obtained and they were getting posted around, and at times they would just get ripped down constantly because of that. So looking in this instance though, if say the person starts streaming it online and then clips are taken and posted it on Twitter, you're not going to really be able to do too much about that. You're just going to get things spoiled. And after playing the 2 demos so far, because we just had like a 20-minute demo over the weekend, yeah, I don't want any of this spoiled, because this game so far, from like the 40 minutes I've played with those 2 demos, is really good. Like, I am really looking forward to playing this game on the 7th, and I don't want a lot of it spoiled, especially with some of the set pieces and different scenes that they are currently setting up. And I usually just bring this to your guys' attention just to make you aware that you want to be careful out there if you see a forum post pop up that's like, hey, Resident Evil Village spoilers in here, and you're like, that can't be possible. The game's not out for another week and a half. Then you click on it and like they just spoil half the plot for you right there with images and video and all of this. And on top of that, we're also in the launch week for new Pokemon Snap, and it seems like around this time, these Switch games tend to leak out. And the thing with that makes it a bit worse than this technically is if, let's say, new Pokemon Snap leaks out from retail or from a warehouse, it can be dumped online and then people can use a hacked Switch to play it and stream it and record video and then just throw it everywhere. And I know what you're thinking right now. It's new Pokemon Snap. What are they going to spoil in terms of story? Probably not a lot. I mean, I don't expect some crazy twist halfway through Pokemon Snap or anything, but the biggest part about Pokemon Snap, if you remember back in the day on the 64, was discovering a bunch of different paths and methods for getting pictures of these different Pokemon that would run around, whether it was getting a Magikarp to the end of the level as a Gyarados or figuring out how to get a Charmeleon to evolve into Charizard by knocking them into the volcano. Those are things that you discover as you play the game, and it's kind of a shame to have those secrets spoiled for you before the game even comes out. It's one thing to tell people about this stuff in the 64 game that came out like 2 decades ago. It's another thing to tell people this during the launch week. But as of now, look out for anything with Resident Evil Village spoilers, and I'll keep you guys up to date on new Pokemon Snap just in case that one does get out there a bit early. I'll just make you aware so you can kind of keep the blinders on for spoilers as we head into Friday. Next up, let's talk about the Nintendo Switch sales in Japan. We follow them week to week here and there as big releases happen, and the Switch is constantly selling big numbers. Like we're talking like 100,000 units is like typical for Nintendo in Japan, and it's pretty clear that the Switch is just a runaway success in general, like in Japan over any other platform. It's always like 95 to 96% Switch, and then like the other 4 or 5% goes to other platforms like the PS5 or PlayStation in general. Then here's the Xbox down here, this tiny little slice, like 0.5% or something. So when we start seeing these kind of stats here, which you can see this tweet, this is from Charts Japan, and we can see kind of a comparison of all of the different best-selling systems in Japan, and the Switch has just recently passed Famicom from Nintendo at almost 19.5 million units sold. The Famicom was 19.35 million, with the Switch now at 19.41, and it's actually right behind the PSP, which, by the way, people seem to forget how successful the PSP was overall. I mean, just in general, worldwide, it sold over 80 million units, but like in Japan, it sold 19.69 million units. And if we take a look here at Charts Japan, they say the 5th spot from PSP should be taken in May, just kind of extrapolating and trying to figure out how many Switch systems would be sold as we go into bigger releases throughout the year. 4th from PS2, taken around November with Pokemon. That makes a lot of sense. Then keep in mind, there's still a lot of games we don't know about that could be, say, Zelda related or Metroid related. I'll throw that out there going through the year. And then 3rd from 3DS, taken in mid-2022. And if it gets to almost 25 million units mid-2022, I'm going to tell you this now, I think the Switch will indeed make a run at the Game Boy. And at that point, it will be right on the doorstep of the DS, which is a system no one would have imagined the Switch reaching when it was first releasing back in 2017. That would place it at nearly 33 million units in Japan alone. But the biggest thing to take away from this chart and the stats that were provided here is that, yeah, the Switch is the best-selling home console from Nintendo, now passing the Famicom. Start thinking about all those systems you really like from Nintendo's history. The Switch is above like all of those different home consoles, and it's going to be running down the PS2, like I said here, probably by the end of this year. And the biggest thing here is, can it get to, say, the likes of the DS and the Game Boy? I kind of think they can if the Switch's life is extended more than we think. And yes, that comes down to if Nintendo can successfully market and launch a Switch revision and turn this entire thing into a Switch family of systems that more or less transcends the idea of hard, clean breaks for generations. Instead, we just slowly phase one out, go to the next one, phase another one, and then we're just always under like the Switch name. Yes, at that point, it's probably going to end up being the best-selling system ever because it could be like a 10 or 12-year system or family of systems. So we'll see which direction Nintendo goes with the overall strategy for the rest of the Switch's life. But yeah, the Switch rolling along in Japan, now the best-selling home console for Nintendo there. Next up, let's talk about an interesting rating that was made public over the weekend, and this has to do with Godfall. Now, Godfall came out on the PS5. Remember, it was the first game that Jeff Keighley hyped up and was like, you're about to see a PlayStation 5 game, and then they showed us Godfall, and everyone was like, oh, cool, that kind of looks next gen. All right, great. This is awesome, a PS5 game. And here we are now. We can see this rating. That's right. It's been rated PEGI 16 for the PlayStation 4. And this is interesting. I mean, we can see it 423, so it's pretty recent. But the thing about this is Godfall had a 6-month exclusivity window to the PS5, and Sony didn't really care. Sure, put it on the PC, whatever on that end. But like, does that mean that the PS4 was also barred from release by this exclusivity? It kind of feels like, which again, strange situation, because that means that Sony would have said, yeah, you can't put it on the PS4, you got to put it on the PS5. And I guess they'll sign some sort of exclusivity and we'll give you guys money to not put it on the PS4. That's at least how it appears from the outside. You should also see it pop up here on the Xbox Series X and the Series S. Seemingly as early as mid-May is what the exclusivity deal seems to line up with at a 6-month window or amount of time. Not that Godfall is going to like set the world on fire when it all of a sudden releases on the PS4 or the Xbox systems. In fact, that's a game that should just go into PlayStation Plus or into Game Pass immediately. If I'm Microsoft, that's getting signed right away to Game Pass, and if I'm Gearbox, I'm taking that check right away. But for Godfall's sake, it needs to go into some sort of service, because it didn't do well in general as a $70 game, and it's seen some price cuts, but it's still kind of expensive, and I don't expect it to do much better as a $60 game on the PS4, or even like a $70 game on the Series X and the Series S. It would do much better just going into Game Pass day one and at least giving it a shot for people to play it. And in our last bit of news, let's talk about the Avengers game, a game that came out and had like the most lukewarm reception, considering it's based on the Avengers, which is really an IP you think would be the easiest thing in the world to make a video game around, but here we are. Anyway, things don't appear to be getting any better for this game, as it looks like the creative director has actually left and gone back to Naughty Dog. We can see this tweet here, and this is posted up by Naughty Dog saying, "Welcome back, Sean Escage. Excited to have you back at the studio and looking forward to doing awesome stuff together." Now, Sean Escage was actually the creative director for the Avengers game. And so where we are now with the Avengers, it's clear it's in like full live service mode. Once they show you that roadmap, like that's it. Like you're just waiting for the next update, and then you got to grind stuff out. Okay, where's the patch to fix this? I got to log in for my daily reward. You're just in almost cruise control. So I guess you really wouldn't need a creative director who would work on story elements and cinematics and cutscenes and all of this, because it's not really necessary, but the community is seeing this as not a good thing. And like, I can see that, because clearly this is a game that I do think will mostly have its highlights as a character shows up, and like that's kind of it. And who knows when Spider-Man is even showing up. That's probably next year based on the roadmap that they gave us. And even when they do the expansion that we're hearing about towards the end of the year, is that going to feel like a full-fledged extra chunk of the game, or is it just going to feel like a very basic update with more of the same kind of gameplay, just in like a different setting? That's the biggest thing for me with the Avengers game, is it just felt like a single-player game where halfway through they realized, okay, this is costing a lot of money. It's got to be a live service game now. Start bolting on all of these live service elements. And I gotta say, I don't think things are looking great for this game going forward. And I'm just curious if after Spider-Man does come out, and let's say it doesn't set the world on fire, if it just kind of moves, I guess, into like a point where they start sunsetting it, or maybe they just start dropping it on things like Game Pass and PlayStation Plus and hope they can hold up the community there. Maybe it goes free to play. Who knows? But at least in its current state, it's not looking great. And before we go to the comment of the day, we're taking a poll that I posted up yesterday, where I asked, will Ubisoft announce a new Splinter Cell game this E3? And well, 12% of you said yes. That's something. 40% said no, and then 48% of you voted for the most likely scenario. Sam Fisher will be added to Just Dance instead. Hey, after they dropped him into a cell phone game and advertised it as this big thing, nothing's off the table here for Ubisoft at E3 with Sam Fisher. I'll ask these questions as we get closer and closer to E3 and see how many of these we get right or wrong based on the number of votes. Like, okay, will this company show this off? And we'll see what happens after E3. It should be pretty fun. And we'll finish up with the comment of the day, as you're seeing here. This is from Infinity Lefty saying, have a great weekend. What games are you playing this weekend? I'm still addicted to Hades. If I can get away, I want to play some more Monster Hunter. So I did play the Resident Evil demo. It was like 20 minutes or so, and I feel like I went kind of slow. Could have got through that a little faster, but I want to just kind of take a look around, get a feel for the game and all of this. And then I did play Near Replicant. I grabbed that Friday. It started up Friday night, so I'm like 5 or 6 hours in now. Still have a ways to go on that one. And then anytime I have like 10 or 15 minutes of downtime, whether a video's rendering or something, I'll kick on Skater XL. And then I think Saturday night, I got a chance after like the podcast to get in a couple of rounds of Halo Master Chief Collection, because I always go back to it. And that's one of the reasons I'm really excited for Halo Infinite, because I'm hoping it actually ends up being a really good Halo game. If not, I guess I have Master Chief Collection to fall back on. And ladies and gentlemen, that's gonna do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit that like button, really helps out. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about here today. There's Resident Evil Village already breaking street date, according to some images online. What do you think about that one? Are you gonna have a hard time avoiding spoilers if they start hitting places like Twitter or YouTube or different forums that you visit? And then look out for new Pokemon Snap. I'm telling you, that one could be next. Then also, what do you think about the Nintendo Switch sales in Japan now becoming the best-selling home console for Nintendo, but will it be able to reach the DS? Thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.